I think one of the things that I want your opinion on is the idea that AEW's approach to pro wrestling isn't necessarily the approach that everybody's kind of used to in the modern day and age, because they've only had kind of one mainstream option for so long, that they're kind of used to the idea of kind of everything being a grudge match and not necessarily grudge even being a feature of a match in a sense, because for a long time it really was, and now it's kind of the basis of pro wrestling. Whereas you've done a lot of booking around, again, the spirit of competition, building win-loss rankings, things along those lines, building contenderships, things along that way. How do you find yourself navigating the idea that, you know, there's a lot of fans that feel wrestling has to be presented this specific way. These things have to have a purpose before I even get to a pro wrestling match, and not necessarily being able to tell the story through the match itself?
Well, that's a great series of points and questions.
Yes.
And I think that it's something that I grew up with, and it went away for a long time, and something we brought back. But there's so many people in those 2 decades plus that never saw it, that really weren't familiar with the concept of wrestling matches where 2 people are fighting for the win, fighting for a place in contention, potentially, because it's going to set them up with a better situation in the company, more title opportunities, a better contract, their winner's share of the purse, and the reasons people want to win matches. But Nitro was the number 1 show on cable, and so much of it was 2 wrestlers going out, and it wasn't even announced. It was just, okay, Rick Martel is going to go out there and wrestle
Prince Iaukea.
Okay, cool. Or 2 luchadors, or a luchador and a wrestler from Japan, or Eddie Guerrero against a wrestler from Japan, or Chris Jericho against a wrestler, right? And
that first hour of Nitro, love it. Sorry, go ahead.
It was fun, and then the person who produced these shows has gone and worked other places, and it's like he forgot all the stuff that he did, and then he's like, "Why would anybody do this? Don't see that on TBS and TNT." He's the one that did it. And
I like, you did this.
Yeah, you did it, and it was cool. And now you say it's not a way that people can watch TV anymore because every match has to have some kind of story to get into it. Well, what about just a story that everybody wants to be the best? And that's how most sports are. And there are storylines going into games and matches. And the worst criticism, the fakest criticism, was there was this criticism of, like, I don't even want to say it because people would make it a quote because they'll pull out the things you say, like as a portion of a quote within a quote. But people question if there were storylines in the show. I'm like, are you shitting me? Like, there's so many in every show. And out of 5-6 matches in a show, most of them will have those hooks. And, I got to say, on next week's show, looking at it, every match will have story going into it on Dynamite. Then there's weeks where it could be a match where 2 wrestlers wrestling for the first time. But maybe it's going to lead somewhere for one of them, for both of them, together, separately. Watch it and find out. And that's the thing. So I do think everybody, like, trying to call stuff in advance is good in terms of, like, it keeps people watching wrestling, which is great. And so I love that. And certainly I always tried to think moves ahead as a kid, as a fan, and then, my whole life until I became a promoter and started booking wrestling matches professionally. But it's a little unusual anytime 2 people get in the ring and you're like, why are they wrestling?
This doesn't make sense.
Maybe they're just wrestling here. Maybe one of them's going to go on to do something different. Maybe somebody's going to get involved. Maybe the 2 of them are going to get involved again. There's so many different ways these things can go. But frankly, on a Nitro, usually it was just 2 guys wrestling and it didn't go anywhere.
Right.
That's not what I do. And that would actually be the greater sin. And the person who complains is actually the person who did this more than anybody, which is the irony. And why are we dancing around his name? I don't know.
What's his name? What's his name, Tony Khan?
Name's Eric, and I guess none of us want to deal with this shit.